What if I told you that the most powerful classroom in the world doesn't have walls, and the most important teacher in your life doesn't have a degree hanging on the wall either? Every single day, the world is speaking to you through people, problems, failures, books, conversations, silence. The question is, are you listening or just existing? Because education isn't something you finish. It's something you practice daily, deliberately, relentlessly. Most people wake up and step into their day as if they are walking through a script that has already been written. Wake up, scroll, eat, work, repeat, sleep. Life starts to feel mechanical when the mind stops questioning what it is doing. But the truth is, every single day is a living classroom, and the difference between growth and stagnation is not the circumstances. It is perception. The moment you begin to see your day as a lesson instead of a routine, everything around you starts to carry meaning. When you treat life as a routine, you begin to operate on autopilot. You stop noticing details. You stop reflecting on experiences. Even meaningful moments pass without leaving an impact. But when you treat life as a lesson, your awareness sharpens. You start noticing patterns in your behavior, in people's reactions, in your decisions. A simple conversation becomes insight. A small failure becomes information. Even silence begins to speak to you in ways it never did before. There is a hidden cost to living on repeat. When every day looks the same mentally, even progress feels invisible. You might be improving, but without awareness, you cannot measure growth. That is why many people feel stuck even when they are moving forward. They are evolving physically and externally, but internally they are not recording the lessons. A life without reflection becomes a loop, not a journey. To shift this mindset, you must begin your day with intention rather than assumption. Instead of asking, "What do I have to do today?" start asking, "What can today teach me?" This small shift transforms your relationship with time. You stop being a passenger in your life and become an observer, a student of experience. Suddenly, even challenges stop feeling like interruptions and start feeling like instruction. Difficult situations in particular become powerful teachers when viewed correctly. A mistake at work is not just an error, it is feedback. A misunderstanding in a relationship is not just conflict, it is communication breakdown revealing emotional patterns. Even frustration becomes valuable because it exposes what you have not yet mastered within yourself. The lesson is never just in success, it is often louder in failure. When you consistently operate with this mindset, your memory of life deepens. You stop forgetting what you go through because you are actively extracting meaning from it. Every day becomes a reference point for improvement. You begin to build internal wisdom instead of external repetition. Over time, this changes not just how you think, but how you carry yourself in the world. You become more thoughtful, more grounded, and more aware, not because life changed, but because your interpretation of life did. Reading is often treated like a habit, but in reality, it is a dialogue between your mind and the world's ideas. Most people read what feels easy, content that confirms what they already believe or entertains them without demanding effort. While this can feel satisfying in the moment, it rarely produces growth. True self-education begins when you stop seeking comfort in reading and start seeking challenge. When you only consume familiar ideas, your thinking stays within the same boundaries. It is like walking in circles inside a room you already know. You recognize every corner, every angle, every pattern, but you never discover what lies beyond the walls. Comfort reading reinforces identity, but it does not expand it. It keeps you mentally safe, but also mentally limited. Challenging material, on the other hand, creates friction in the mind, and that friction is where learning begins. When you read something that confuses you, disagrees with you, or forces you to slow down, your brain is actively working. You are not just absorbing information, you are processing, questioning, and rebuilding your understanding. This effort is uncomfortable, but it is also transformative. Growth does not happen in ease. It happens in resistance. There is a moment many people avoid when reading difficult ideas: confusion. But confusion is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that you are entering unfamiliar territory. If everything you read feels instantly clear, you are likely staying within what you already know. Real education begins when clarity is delayed. It forces you to sit with uncertainty, analyze deeper, and connect ideas that do not immediately align. Challenging reading also reshapes your thinking patterns over time. It trains your mind to handle complexity without shutting down. Instead of rejecting ideas that do not fit your current worldview, you begin to explore them. This builds intellectual flexibility, the ability to hold multiple perspectives without collapsing into one rigid belief. That flexibility is what separates surface level knowledge from deep understanding. To truly educate yourself daily, you must intentionally choose discomfort in what you read. That might mean exploring subjects you are weak in, perspectives you disagree with, or authors who think differently from you. At first, it may feel slow or even frustrating. But over time, you will notice something subtle but powerful. Your thinking becomes sharper, your understanding becomes broader, and your ability to process complex ideas becomes stronger without effort. Most people think education comes from books, courses, or structured learning, but one of the richest sources of knowledge has always been right in front of us: people. Every individual you encounter carries a lifetime of experiences, decisions, failures, and victories that you can never fully replicate on your own. Yet, most of this value goes unnoticed because people are often seen, not studied. When you shift your mindset from simply interacting with people to learning from them, your awareness changes. Conversations stop being just exchanges of words and start becoming exchanges of insight. The way someone reacts to pressure, the way they speak about their struggles, or even the way they stay silent in certain moments can reveal more about life than a textbook ever could. But only if you are paying attention. Every person you meet is shaped by different environments, challenges, and beliefs. A colleague at work might teach you about discipline without saying a word about it. A friend might reveal what emotional resilience looks like through how they handle setbacks. Even strangers can show you patterns of human behavior, how people respond to kindness, stress, success, or rejection. These are lessons happening in real time, but they require observation, not just presence. The problem is that most people listen to reply, not to understand. In doing so, they miss the deeper layer of communication. Words are only the surface. Beneath them are tone, emotion, intention, and experience. When you begin to listen beyond words, you start picking up lessons that are not directly taught. You begin to understand why people think the way they do, not just what they think. Learning from people also requires humility. You cannot approach every interaction believing you already know enough. That mindset blocks growth. Instead, you must assume that everyone has something to teach you, even if it is something you do not want to become. Sometimes you learn what to do, and sometimes you learn what to avoid. Both are equally valuable forms of education. Over time, this way of learning builds emotional intelligence. You become more aware of human behavior, more patient with differences, and more skilled at understanding perspectives that are not your own. You stop reacting impulsively to people and start analyzing situations more deeply. Life becomes less about judgment and more about understanding patterns. And in that shift, people become one of your greatest sources of daily education. Without ever opening a book, most people are trained to believe that intelligence is proven by how quickly they can answer. In school, in work, even in casual conversations, the one who responds fastest often gets seen as the most knowledgeable. But real intellectual growth does not come from rushing to answers. It comes from the depth of your questions. The quality of your life is shaped far more by what you ask than what you already know. When you rely only on answers, your thinking becomes fixed. Answers close doors. They finalize conclusions. They give you a sense of certainty that feels comfortable, but often limits further exploration. On the other hand, questions open doors. They invite possibility, they challenge assumptions. A strong question does not end thinking, it extends it. It keeps your mind in motion instead of locking it into a single perspective. The habit of asking better questions starts with self-awareness. Instead of immediately reacting to situations or opinions, you pause internally and ask, why do I think this way? What else could be true here? What am I not seeing? These kinds of questions force you to step outside your automatic thinking patterns. They reveal biases, assumptions, and blind spots that usually operate silently in the background of your mind. In daily life, most learning is lost not because people lack information, but because they fail to question it deeply. For example, reading something and accepting it immediately may feel efficient, but asking why it is true, how it was proven, and what context it depends on turns passive reading into active learning. The same applies to conversations. Instead of simply agreeing or disagreeing, asking what led someone to think this way creates understanding that goes beyond surface level interaction. Good questions also sharpen critical thinking. When you consistently challenge ideas, even your own, you train your mind to examine information instead of absorbing it blindly. This builds intellectual independence. You stop depending entirely on external opinions and start forming your own reasoning. Over time, this makes your thinking more stable because it is built on exploration rather than assumption. Asking better questions also transforms how you handle problems. Instead of seeing challenges as blocks, you begin to see them as puzzles. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to teach me? Or what is the next smallest step I can take? This shift changes frustration into curiosity and confusion into direction. The moment your questions improve, your understanding of life deepens automatically because you are no longer just searching for answers. You are learning how to think. Most people end their day the same way they started it. Without awareness, they move from activity to exhaustion and then into sleep, carrying the weight of the day without ever truly processing it. But reflection is what turns a lived day into a learned day. Without reflection, experience fades. With reflection, experience transforms into wisdom. At night, the mind naturally slows down. The noise of the world reduces, distractions fade, and your thoughts become more visible. This is the most powerful moment to look back at your day with honesty, not to judge yourself harshly, but to observe yourself clearly. What did you do today? How did you react? Where did you grow? And where did you fall back into old patterns? These questions turn an ordinary day into a structured learning session. When you skip reflection, you lose valuable data about your own behavior. You might repeat the same mistakes without realizing it. You might miss subtle progress because you never took the time to notice it. Life becomes a blur of experiences that do not connect. But when you reflect, you start building a timeline of awareness. You begin to see patterns, how you respond under pressure, how your emotions shift, how your decisions evolve over time. Reflection also creates accountability. During the day, it is easy to act without thinking deeply, but knowing that you will revisit your actions at night changes how you behave. You become more intentional. You start making choices with awareness because you know they will not disappear into forgetfulness. They will return later in your own thoughts, where you will have to face them honestly. Another powerful aspect of reflection is emotional clarity. Many emotions during the day are reactive: anger, stress, frustration, excitement. But at night, when things quiet down, you can examine those emotions without being controlled by them. You can ask, why did I feel that way? Was my reaction necessary? Could I have responded differently? This process helps you understand not just what you felt, but why you felt it. Over time, nightly reflection becomes a form of self-correction. You begin adjusting your behavior in small but consistent ways. You communicate better, think more clearly, and act with greater awareness because you are constantly reviewing your internal patterns. Instead of drifting through days, you start building them deliberately. Each night becomes a checkpoint where experience is not just remembered, but refined. Knowledge has a strange limitation. It can feel powerful in your mind and completely useless in your life at the same time. Many people collect information endlessly. Through videos, books, conversations, and advice, but very little of it ever becomes part of how they actually live. The gap between knowing and doing is where most growth disappears. That is why application is the final and most important stage of self-education. When you learn something new, your brain forms a temporary understanding. It feels clear in the moment, almost like you have mastered it. But if you do not use it, that clarity slowly fades. The mind is not designed to store unused knowledge with strength. It prioritizes experience over theory. This is why something you understand today can feel distant a week later if it is never practiced. Applying knowledge immediately is what transforms it from information into intelligence. For example, if you learn a better way to communicate, the value is not in knowing the method, it is in using it in your next conversation. If you learn a new way of thinking about discipline, it only becomes real when you choose discipline in a moment where you would normally delay or avoid action. Learning becomes alive only when it enters behavior. One of the biggest mistakes in self-education is believing that more learning automatically leads to more growth. In reality, growth comes from depth, not accumulation. A single idea applied consistently can change your life more than 100 ideas stored and forgotten. Application forces understanding to deepen because real situations are unpredictable. They test whether you truly understand something or only recognize it in theory. When you apply knowledge quickly, you also expose gaps in your understanding. Theory often feels perfect until reality challenges it. That challenge is not failure, it is refinement. You begin to see what works, what doesn't, and what needs adjustment. This feedback loop is where real learning happens. Without application, without feedback, there is no improvement. Over time, this habit changes your entire relationship with learning. You stop collecting information for the sake of feeling informed and start learning with intention. Every new idea becomes a tool, not a trophy. You begin to trust experience over assumption and action over overthinking. Slowly, your life becomes a continuous cycle of learning, testing, adjusting, and growing, where knowledge is no longer something you keep, but something you live. In the end, self-education is not built in moments of inspiration. It is built in moments of discipline. It is not about how much you consume, but how much you transform. Not about how many ideas you hear, but how many you live. Every day gives you access to lessons hidden in plain sight, but only a focused mind turns those lessons into growth. If you treat each day as a classroom, challenge your thinking instead of comforting it, learn from people around you, question everything more deeply, reflect honestly at night, and apply what you learn without delay, then education stops being something you chase. It becomes something you are.